OK, let's take another question from Erica Pease.
How many insects need to be consumed before our politicians are held to a code of conduct fit for their positions?
Erica, and by the way, that is a fabulous hat you've got on there. I can't let that pass without comment. So, obviously you're referring to Matt Hancock, the previous Health Secretary, who's in the jungle at the moment. Are you casting your net wider there with that question? You seem to be.
That's the flippant end of the wedge. We could go for repeated allegations of bullying. We could go for security breaches. We could go for resigning and getting your job back a week later. None of it is behaviour that anybody in this audience would be allowed to get away with in an actual place of work. That there are employers out there that allow it is bad enough. That it's the government, I find unbelievable.
And I must admit, I'm not taking a judgment one way or the other on your question, but I've been doing this programme for 4 years, which I know is a blink of the eye compared to my illustrious predecessor, David Dimbleby. But this question keeps coming up and has only come up, I'd say, in the last few months. And it's not something I saw before. Make of that, Caroline.
What? Well, I think that the Hancock farce and the Williamson disgrace, which are just the two latest examples, are absolute symptoms of a rot at the heart of this Tory government. And I think that when you look at what we've had to live through over the past years, when we've seen decade now of Tory infighting, 5 prime ministers, 7 chancellors, 6 home secretaries, 10 education secretaries, Gavin Williamson is apparently the 8th minister or whip to have resigned in this year alone. You know, if this was happening in a school, they'd be in special measures. If it was in a business, they'd be in administration. But instead, they're this rotten, rotten government that we have to put up with. So I think we should be putting them out of their misery, putting ourselves out of that misery too, and calling a general election right now.
And here in the white shirt.
For myself, whichever side of the political divide you fall, I noticed that each scandal, or whatever you want to call it, every time something comes out, the level of narcissism and self-interest of MPs at the moment is off the scale. They need to be looking after ourselves as constituents and people of the country, rather than looking after their own self-interest.
So when you hear Matt Hancock saying he's going into the jungle because he wants to show people there's a real him...
It's the same as what you hear from all politicians. Oh, this is the real me, that's the real me. It's all, I can't say the word, but we all know what we're thinking.
I mean, it was extraordinary that Matt Hancock said he had to go to the jungle in order to be able to make change happen. He's been the Health Secretary, for goodness sake. He could have made real change happen, instead of which he's now being held to account by Anton Deck, instead of being held to account by the COVID inquiry, which is where he should be, answering questions about the total mishandling of the COVID crisis.
I totally agree with what you're saying. I would like to see a general election.
Glad you call him Gavin Williamson. What beggars belief, as far as I'm concerned, somebody who's been sacked twice by a previous Prime Minister, somebody who's accused of bullying...
Well, I think it's 3 times now, 3 times. 3 times, yeah.
I mean, accused of bullying, and yet he's a sir. I feel very sorry for the royal member of the royal family who has to put the sword either side of him when, you know, somebody like that. And it's just the number... And there's Jake... What's he?
Berry.
Yeah, he's a sir now. What's he done?
One party chairman.
The whole system, honest system, is totally devalued by
you find that
what's
most
going
of them
on.
have gone into the Lords. And I've got to tell you, as a businessman, I'm sort of finished with politicians. Because
are you including the current, the present crop?
Because we've been living last.
You all seem to be getting on quite well in the green room beforehand. But are you including this lot as well?
The last 3 years, we've sat there, watched delusional people living on a different planet, believing anything they say, thinking that we're all stupid enough to believe it ourselves, and we're not that stupid, public. They've got very little or regulation whatsoever, and whatever regulation they did have, they tried to sweep away. And we're acting like a tin pot dictatorship, where everybody gets into Parliament, fills their boots, enjoys life, goes on to the House of Lords or Job for Life or or bank or something, and actually they come first, their party comes second, and the nation has come a very poor third for the last few years. Hold on, I'm not quite finished. And this is an opportunity now. Our third Prime Minister in this session of Parliament, this is our opportunity to try and put things right and get confidence. Alternatively, we're going to have to start...
Have another election. Have an election. Get another government. That's all we need.
Both parties. Hold on. I'm not picking any party. I've been absolutely independent here. Will we then start asking for a political regulator to regulate politicians because they can't behave themselves? Do you know, if you're a director of a public company in the city, whatever you say, you've got to have verification for. You've got to verify. Otherwise, they grab you, throw you out. Politicians seem to be quite happy to go on news channels just spouting what they actually know is a damn right lie. And that has got to stop. And has got to stop now. This is our opportunity to get some stability back in the country and for it to try and rebuild and then have an election on the right terms where people understand this is a serious job and we need serious people with ability to do the job for the nation.
Well, I'm just going to come back to you. I mean, Theo says that you're making the point about parties overall.
Yes.
But we've heard a lot of disillusionment from the audience here tonight. How are you going to convince people